everybody, and welcome to the Wealthy LaLa Show with myself, Laurie Laursen. How are you doing today? Today is Monday. Happy Monday to you. And so what do we want to talk about today? Today is like a curious Monday. So I was actually looking at what I did want to talk about today, and one of the things that I've known about myself, well, actually, it wasn't something that I knew. It's something I've discovered about myself, is that I am really curious. Um, I actually have saw that as a negative thing for a really long time because I didn't actually see what it actually was. But what I noticed is that my curiosity often bothered a lot of people around me, like, why can't you just be happy with the way things are? Why do you have to question everything? Um, like, aren't you just happy? And or and what discovered, well, I used to think to myself, true, I was like, yeah, well, why can't I just leave everything alone? Aren't I happy that I keep wanting to ask about more, have more, do more, be more? And what I realized is that actually this life isn't meant to be stagnant. And a lot of what the people around us and our world that we live in wants us to be the same and wants things to stay the same and to not change. And actually, the one thing about this world is that everything changes. It's always changing. And it's just, and as we're resisting it, it's actually what's making it even like challenging. And I couldn't see that before. I actually still, like, when I was in the so much of the wrongness of myself, I couldn't see that this was actually a capacity. I get that it's a capacity that we all have. I think I just came in a little more headstrong with regards to it. And whatever I was asking for when I decided to come into this life must have had something to do with wanting to be really curious about everything that's going on and just not take things at face value, just not let, not just like, oh, well, that's just the way it is. But is it really? Um, and it was really interesting because I had a conversation today with someone, and they were saying they were just offhandedly sharing about work and saying how there was a person at work who ended up being off work for about a year because they ended up getting cancer in the colon, in their bowels. And so they ended up having surgery. They were, off for a while, and they've been given a clear go, a clean bill of health with regards to that. And then this person was telling, or had heard then too, that there was another fella who actually ended up being diagnosed with the same thing, and he wasn't doing as well. His prognosis didn't look as good. He was struggling a lot more with it and having a lot harder time. And I listened to this story as this person was sharing it to me, and before I would have just judged myself for being like wanting, I'm not even really sure how I want to say that because I just can't find the words right now. But really what I ended up saying afterwards, it was more that I asked a question. I'm like, how two people get what we would call the same or similar things? What makes one get better and the other person not? And it's almost like, without questioning it, it could look like two random people getting similar things, and then they're at the effect of life, like the effect of life. It's a random thing. They're victims of this, of their bodies, of their life, of their circumstance. And yet I can't help, I just can't help it, but to question, is there actually something really going on? Now, the point of this is not for me to get into everyone else's business and be figuring out their lives and have judgments about the rightness or the wrongness of it. But to be curious is there something more expansive? Is there something else more possible for all of us? And I mean, I was given a diagnosis, 17 years ago, and it didn't take me very long to be like, I've tried this medication, it didn't really work. I tried this medication, it didn't really work. I tried this medication, it didn't really work. And after the fourth different medication that I tried, and very little, if any, result was happening with the symptoms of my body, I began to question. Now, keep in mind, people, 17 years ago, nowadays you can talk about this kind of stuff and it's a lot less strange. It's a lot more common. But 17 years ago, oh my gosh, that it was not something that people talked about. And but it didn't take me long to be like, hey, you know what? The doctor, the specialist, the system, like nobody's asked me about me. They've just looked at my body. This is the symptoms. This is what we need to do. And then you just should follow or need to follow the protocol. And so, it sent me on basically the last, this last journey, 17 years of being curious about all these different things. And I mean, I've done so many different modalities. I've done Reiki and Touch for Health and Jin Shindo, body mind acupressure and access consciousness, Byron Katie, the work, Abraham Hicks. Oh my gosh, essential oils. I've tried vegan. I've tried vegetarian. I've, like so many different things. And it's interesting because I've gotten really interesting bits and pieces as life has gone along from all of this stuff. And the biggest thing that I've discovered as I've kept going the latest thing that I've been really putting a lot of I guess conscious time and effort into is meditation. And I'm going to say, like, all the other bits and pieces of everything else that I've learned has been incredible. It's given me such a cool base to have an understanding of my body, to have an understanding of consciousness, to have an understanding of this universe that we live in, to have an understanding of other people. And what I've discovered is that all of that information that I gathered has brought me to this place of having just recently, well, since September, I started doing meditations. Now, the type of meditations that I've been choosing that have been working for me in just incredible ways is the meditations of Dr. Joe Dispenza. Now, please go, if it feels light to you, if you're curious about him, he's got lots of different interviews you can find of him on YouTube, and you can get a sense of, what he's like, what he talks about. And it's really interesting because talking about curiosity is what got him to create to where he's at now. And I am 53, and from what I've been able to gather, he's about a couple of years older than me. When he was in his early 20s, he was in a triathlon. And when he was at the point where when he was in the part of the triathlon that he was on the bike, he actually ended up just like he went through past a police officer waved him forward. He was being like the controller at that point. And he told Joe to go, and it ended up that he didn't see the vehicle that was behind, and a vehicle hit him from behind on his bike. And so the short version is that, and you can find out his story in his books and stuff like that in more detail, but basically he got hit from behind and he broke somewhere around 6 of his vertebrae in his back. And he was recommended at that point to basically have this Harrington rod surgery where they put in steel bars in his back, and then, he may or may not walk again, and who knows how well he functions. And something inside of him told him no, not to. He didn't know what that something was, but it was just a gut instinct. Something told him not to. Now, he even admits that had he been a doctor to a patient who had the same condition as him, he would have recommended that surgery. But with it being him, there was an awareness that he had. There was something that he knew that was letting him know to try it. So basically, what he did then is he discovered that if there was a universal intelligence or God, intuition watching him, that if he put his attention on what he wanted, then that was a possibility that could be created in this world. So what he did then was he was basically, completely bedridden. He started visualizing / meditating on the parts of his body and seeing his bones be rebuilt. And then when he started to bring in then even more than that, he did the visualization. He did this every day, and he would do it for like 2 to 3 hours at a time. And what he ended up adding into it was because he started to notice a bit of a change. And then what started to really make the difference was when he started to bring in gratitude, or like love for life. And so it was like he was driving a car, was the visualizing, and as he would add in the emotion, like this gratefulness and this love for life, that was like putting the gas on the car, so it would create it going faster. And basically, again, the long and short of it was that he ended up I think by 10 weeks, he was literally back up, walking and working. And he never did require the surgery. And he actually made a deal with what he calls, God or the universe, that if this worked, he would spend the rest of his life studying, understanding this, and then, of course, sharing it, and which is what brings him to today. And what I find so incredibly fascinating about his work is he knows that this is possible for all of us. So whether it's an illness in our body, whether it is, cancer, whether it is changing your financial situation or creating something greater with relationships in your life, or just even having more joy in your life, that is all possible. And actually, on a side note, well, because of this conversation, what that's bringing up for me is that I started doing his meditations at the beginning of September, and I haven't missed a day. I think I'm on something like 17 weeks now, and I do it every day for an hour to 2 hours. And when I'm finished my meditation, I come out of it feeling greater, happier, lighter than I did before I started. And there's been some days when this has been really challenging, and I've kept doing it anyways. And what I noticed is that what this meditation and everything else that I chose beforehand, everything that my curiosity brought me through, has brought me to this space of a joy, an innate happiness. It's a contentment. It's a expansiveness like I've never ever experienced in my entire life before. This meditating for me has given me. I'm not sure if I said this, but the confidence that I have in myself has just been beautiful. And so even though, and what's interesting is he even talks about this in his workshops, that when people go to his workshops and they experience this, this gratitude, this love for life, this whatever they experience during their meditations, during his workshops, and it's things you can experience on your own too. It's just sometimes in a group, it exponentializes it, which is really awesome. But what happens is you become so just sort of happy within yourself that whether you get the money or the relationship or the body, healing, whether you get that or not, you still have you, and you have that innate sense of joy in your world. Now, those are the words I'm using for it, because that's what I'm creating. And what's really neat is the less that it's significant, the end result, the more I just go for just having more gratitude and just being more curious as to what this next meditation, the next meditation, the next meditation is going to create. It just, all of that seems not relevant, any outcomes, yet it's like there's not an attachment to it. It's like I have it all already. Anyways. Oh, I just got to tell you guys, it is just so cool. I'm so incredibly grateful, and I'm so incredibly grateful that I'm at this place in my life and starting this podcast. Like, I mean, this is now this is the day one of the third week already. And yeah, just how does it get any more beautiful than this? So on that note, I'm going to say goodbye for today, and we'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for listening. Have an amazing day, and have fun being curious. See where it takes you.